I guess with Bard. So I'm gonna have the game open just so that people can see. Oh, you know what? Actually, we'll start with the way they are in game. So I have the game open for people to see what we're talking about when we are discussing these, and we will be talking about the single player aspect of the game, how these classes rank in playing the game single player. We'll try to. I don't think the difficulty matters. Well, the difficulty does matter, so we'll mostly be talking about the normal ish difficulties. However, a lot of the classes and things we talk about do um, act more or less the same way in the harder and easier difficulties, in my opinion, as well. But we'll see how it goes. So the first class we'll be talking about is warrior, and I'll just start off quickly. I think warrior is, I mean, I think it's pretty much the go-to. I'm kind of debating whether S or A tier. I'm just gonna put it on S tier, and then as we move on and other people talk about it, we'll be able to adjust it. But I feel like, as far as classes go, this is the vanilla go-to tier because it is the most straightforward one. I think um, you're you're big, you're bulky, you do melee attacks, powerful melee attacks, and there is different um, things you can do with it. For example, the fighter, and all of these. So every class has four subclasses, and all of them are the same with the exception of one. With the exception of one thing. So as you can see, warrior has uh, Battleforged and Strength of Will, they are the same in all the different four subclasses. However, the different one is the first one, the Combatant. So Fighter has Combatant, Armor Expert, Cornered Animal, Barbarian. And so the best one out of, if we're going to be quickly talking about the four subclasses, I think the best one, so the best one would probably, in my opinion, be Man at Arms. You start with 40% physical damage resistant, which is pretty, pretty good. Um, this one is actually also very good. Fighter as well. You gain a 25% bonus to damage with all non-sonic weapons, which basically means the sonic weapons are like guitars. Uh, Pretty much right. Can anyone correct me? Is it just guitars?
Yes.
Yeah, just guitars. So any you gain a 25 bonus to damage with pretty much every weapon, every melee weapon for sure, every melee weapon, every bow weapon. So that is pretty cracked in my opinion. Now this one, the barbarian, is also very good. Your melee attacks can cause limb loss on crucial hits, not just grievous hits. Those are, they're kind of rare. So this isn't the most common picked class, I think, out of these all, but it's still pretty good. And honestly, it depends on the play style of the player when they choose it. But pit brawler, sorry, for example, this one comes very handy in clutches, like when you have low HP, when you're basically it's when you're fighting and it's a long round, and um, you're already low health, and then when you're lower health, the more you do more damage, it comes very in handy to try and clutch a win at the last second before you're about to lose. Um, and the second one, Strength of Will, this applies to all of them. All bonuses from strength are increased by 20%. This is huge. Strength in this game means damage mostly. Um, Damage with melee weapons. So when you have a sword, axe, whatever, uh, playing as a warrior, all the damage you do will always be increased by 20% by default, and that's pretty good. Battleforged, the maximum total health increased by 10%. This is also very good. Helps you tank more hits, especially in early game. Helps with survival. Um, and now the special abilities are pretty decent as well. Now the warrior strike. is powerful hit. It does 18. I mean, the damage changes the more powerful you become, the more it does. But you break a piece of armor of your um, enemy, so that is pretty good, especially in the beginning of the round. And this is Brander. Oh, sorry. Let me go back on the Warrior Strike. I think this one is the one that only you can only use it once per fight. So it's a one and go. But when it happens, it is pretty. If it works, it's pretty useful, especially in the beginning. And then this is Brander, a powerful kick that knocks your enemy back and stuns them. Now, stuns in this game are extremely valuable for crowd control. So this is probably one of the best uh, starting abilities you can start with. Anything that stuns your enemy, that makes them lose turns and gives you more turns for your abilities to reload, is extremely valuable. And basically, and you start with 2 bonus strength, 2 bonus attack, which is the typical vanilla warrior way. But it's pretty straightforward. It's very good. I'm just gonna end my segment on saying that I think warrior is S tier among the classes. You could make an argument it is A tier. I'm gonna leave it at S tier for right now, and I'm gonna let somebody else continue. Neek, for example, you wanna take it from here? What do you think?
Yeah, very well, very well. Well, what I'm thinking is that there are more classes in this game that have a more powerful tool set for you to use. The barbarian class is very interesting as it will help you if you choose to use RNG as your weapon for advantage. Really like the barbarian class where it says with Primal Rage, your melee attacks can cause limb loss on critical hits, not just grievous hits, and that way you could perhaps make bosses a lot weaker or make short work of them much better. And the armor system in Swords and Sandals Immortals got, has got you covered quite well regardless of the damage that's being done to you, especially if you play on the harder difficulties. I also don't tend to spend skill points into vitality, or I'm also not very busy with getting really strong armor. What I really care about is dealing damage and avoiding damage in the first place. So while the warrior is probably a great choice for beginners on easier difficulties, I would rank it at B tier, but I would also concede for low A tier, so to say, because of the barbarian class.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, Troll Project.
Yeah, I think he overall has the best stats for a melee fighter, but his starting abilities are kind of lacking compared to those of other classes. Warrior Strike can be used multiple times per fight. Same for this is Brandor. All of the classes do enough damage to matter. Barbarian is the worst, but is also the most fun. In my opinion, Mana Turns is the best because eventually you can get another 40% physical damage reduction and take basically no physical damage. Then Pit Roller is a more unique playstyle, usually requires more health than the rest, so you can tank one hit and one shot your opponent if you survive barely. Pretty much it.
Where would you rank Warrior then? If you know
A, A tier.
A. Okay, yeah, that's fair. I guess it's my bad. I thought that the Warrior Strike is only a one time, because usually everybody has a one time ability they can use. And maybe I'm mistaking it with something else. I thought Warrior Strike was the one for this one. So I guess maybe not. So that's my bad. Um, uh, Sovereign.
Well, I personally would rank Warrior in the S tier. I believe that it is the best class in the game. in my experience, it just synergizes very well with the best strategy in the game, which is spamming stun attacks. So it is actually very good even at the hardest difficulties. And it has 4 subclasses which are all viable. Fighter is great for extra attack. Man at Arms is great for extra defense if you want that. Barbarian is kind of not really good because it relies on RNG, but if you get lucky, then it is absolutely like fun. And Pit Brawler offers a kind of quirky dynamic bonus instead of just a stat increase, which can be really good for experienced players. So I do believe Warrior deserves to be in the S tier. It's, in my opinion, the best class in the game.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you are, and I think, granted, I should mention it's obvious, but it is, everything is from a point of view, and everything might be, is. I'm a bit biased towards Warrior because I have used it the most among the classes, and everybody judges classes and tier lists on their own opinion, but I kind of agree. So I guess we have 2 people for S tier, 1 for B tier, and 1 for A tier. I mean, I could leave it at S tier or top of A tier. I can leave it at top of A tier for now because we do have one person that put it down, and it is a fair argument that it basically excels, and it's a very, I think it's probably the most well rounded up. It might be one of the better rounded up classes because it fares good in everything, but it doesn't have something exceedingly broken about it, in my opinion. Especially for the harder difficulties of the game, if you want to go that way, there are classes that handle some of them better. So just for right now, I'll leave it at top of A tier, and then we will move on to the next one, which is the Wizard. Oh boy. Okay. Since we're going, I think it's best to go in the same order that we started, right? So that we started that way anyway. So, okay. I think we've all played Wizard at least once. I have for sure. I think I played it once, and it's. Let me hold on. Okay, I'm gonna put it in C tier. It is a very difficult and annoying class to play. And I will tell you why. Because you think that Wizard becomes exceedingly powerful, and it kind of does, but it does it the very late game, and it's not guaranteed to be 100% effective even then. Wizard, like most support classes, or I guess like the Wizard classes in other games, in the early game and middle game, it is just a nightmare to deal with, to level up, to handle, because it does no damage. The spells on it does, because the main way you fight is using spells and magic, right? They are not accurate. Your spell attacks don't land. They're not very accurate in early and even middle game. It is a nightmare to sort through. I've had to exit game and start over, or just take a break because I wouldn't be able to defeat opponents. And in the beginning, especially, you basically become like a worse archer, where you just have to run away, reload your skills, and do it again. And it's just a dread. But talking about the different subclasses of it, let me just quickly. There's now the best one, I think, is the best subclasses among it are the Spellblade and the Sorcerer. Now give me a sec. So for Sorcerer, there's a 30% chance your elemental spells do double damage. That is actually pretty decent, and the chance is not too bad as well. So basically, sometimes when you do a spell that will do 1,000 damage, when this kicks in, it's gonna do 2,000 damage. So that's pretty decent. And the other quickly, the other parts of the wizard are mastermind. All bonuses from intellect are increased by 20%. So, your spells do more damage when you're a wizard, obviously. So that is pretty good for a wizard. And Master of Elements, all your elemental spells do 20% extra damage. The elemental spells being fire, necromancy, poison, and ice, the frozen spells. Those are the
And
different.
lightning.
Okay, yes, lightning. Okay, yes, and lightning. Thank you. Those are the elemental that this refers to, and arcane blast. Arcane blast is pretty good actually. However, being the unique ability to this class, I think it has a 33% chance of landing at any time, or it basically has a lower. It has a low, or maybe even 20%. I'm not sure. If you are a wizard, it does increase. However, it's not a super sure thing. Arcane grasp. I think this is actually this might be a physical attack. I'm not sure. Physical attack is melee attacks and bow attacks, and the magic attacks are not. Well, actually, are the magic attacks physical as well, guys?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. The magic attacks are physical as well. Yeah, it's the sonic attacks that are not physical. Gotcha. Right. Uh, so yeah, overall, when you look at on paper, it's a pretty good class, but it doesn't work out realistically. But if you were to place this class, I would say sorcerer would be the subclass that I would choose, or spellblade, which is if your essence bar is at least 75% full, all physical attacks do double damage, which is very the spellblade is probably the best one. Basically, you have a lot of stamina. You use the spell where it doesn't infinite. I forgot what it's called. You use the spell that you don't waste any stamina while doing anything for a certain amount of turns, and basically you do double damage for a certain amount of time, which is pretty correct. And at the late game, crowd control with this class does become very good. But it's a chore to play with. It's more, I feel like it's more annoying than rewarding playing this class, and sadly it might have been better in previous iterations of the game, but at this point it's not. Conjurer, that's so this is kind of situational. There's a 30% chance any elemental skill you use will have no cooldown on it. This is more of a RNG situational type of thing, and in this game, the way to combat enemies is you need consistency. You need to crowd control them, especially as a wizard. You need to keep them far away. You need to freeze them or do damage to them while keeping them far away, and not letting them get near you or play any turns and stuff like that. And this kind of is very situational, and it's not something that you can rely on. This one is also kind of like not anything special, like a 30% chance that any skill you have will cost no essence. Yeah, it's alright, I guess. It does help actually for early game, I guess, but it's nothing extraordinary in my opinion. So yeah, I would put wizard in C tier. Nick.
I'm sorry, I was thinking for a second. Well, I am gonna say I would put wizard into B tier because of the Spellblade subclass and the damage it gives you to physical attacks. It really helps you to do like that double damage, and especially in harder difficulties, to be on par with your enemies. But a later game, you do need a lot of attack, so your attacks can also land. But I would also say that I didn't know that spells counted as physical attacks, so I never tried that. But the wizard class isn't really great because I never really use it as a wizard class. When I play wizard, I always use spellblade, and I kind of use it as you would use a warrior build. So to be like a warrior that almost does double damage, and that can be great for later game, especially if you back it up with other talents. And I really like the arcane grasp in the beginning that does that physical damage, and I think that's kind of it. So I would put it in low B tier, but I would concede for high C tier.
Yep. Just to to add on to your when you said that you didn't know about the physical attacks as well. That's something that kind of it was hard for me to comprehend as well. Basically, I think um, the reason they're called physical attacks is because of the existence of sonic attacks, which are not physical attacks. The sonic attacks are the attacks that you use with guitars and screaming, taunts. Sorry, and those are non-physical attacks. And I think Oliver, the creator of the game, might have made the thing like the term physical attacks to differentiate it too. But yeah, I didn't know that. I thought the magics were not physical as well.
But then I have another question. When you go to warrior and the fighter class, it says you gain a 25% bonus to damage with all non-sonic weapons. So when you use the bash attack with a guitar, it should also count as sonic weapon damage, or doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, the guitar is a sonic weapon, so it should. Well, actually, I don't think it should, but I'm not sure. This is kind of a very specific scenario which would have to be tested, and I haven't uh, tested that. I think in theory it shouldn't, but I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry to not get sidetracked.
Continue.
Yeah, sorry. Troll, Europe.
Yes, I just to clarify, the wizard's starting abilities are the ones that do physical damage. The fire, poison, and all of those other spells do their own type of damage. I agree with you that early game wizard is miserable. Damage is lacking, energy consumption is gigantic. You run out of energy after casting one spell. I think mage is the best if you're going for a pure spellcaster to counteract the horrible early game energy consumption. And Spellblade, if you build him like a warrior with less strength and more stamina, has one of the best DPS in the whole game. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually, so you said, okay, so is there three types of attacks? So physical, sonic, and elemental, right? Are those is the elemental the third one? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for all the fans out there listening, yeah, this is see, I mean, this is why I've gathered different people, different with different expertises of the game because it is. It can become a complex game where a lot of the things might be confusing or unclear, and even I'm still to this day learning new things. I mean, I kind of sort of knew it, but I wasn't actually certain. So, and I had forgotten that elemental attacks do exist. So yeah, physical attacks are weapons, magic, and bows. Elemental attacks are also magic attacks, but they're only the specific, the fire, lightning, frozen, necrotic, and might be missing something, but I think that those
Poison.
and poison. Yes. Anyway, let's move on. Sovereign, what do you think of Wizard?
I'm just going to say it. Wizard is the worst class. It belongs in the D tier and it is absolute trash. In this game, casting spells is just not viable and not fun. And even if you look at its subclasses, Mage and Conjurer, they do not exist. They are just trash. They are bad. Sorcerer, you have 30% chance to do double damage. You could have 100% chance to do double damage, and that would only make him okay, not good, just okay. So the only saving grace is Spellblade, which is basically just warrior again. So like, why would you ever just play a wizard? I do not understand it. I did it like 3 times, once for the achievements and 2 times just to test if it's actually fun, if I'm missing something. And I just do not understand the appeal of wizard. It's just the least powerful and least fun class. I just cannot do it. It's D tier. It's trash, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of put the nail in the coffin there. I mostly agree with what you're saying. I think we should leave it in C tier so that, it's not completely 100% without any benefits or something. And some people might find it fun. But unfortunately, yeah, for most people, even others in the Discord that we've talked to, of the community they have played there, it's just not agreed that it's just not a very enjoyable class to play, which is one of the main things, right? Like, you can find a way to win with any of the classes in probably
If I
subclasses.
can,
Yeah,
if I can say something more,
of course.
I believe the elemental spells they work best when you use their effects to like supplement your playstyle. If you like use a poison spell to stop enemy regeneration and then you use your physical attacks or bard attacks, that can work. They just do not work if you rely exclusively on spells to kill the enemy. That just does not work in my experience.
Well, I mean, for me, it technically works because I did complete the game as a wizard on, I want to say, hard difficulty or very hard. That was like a year ago or many months ago, but it was hard and it wasn't as consistent as it should have been. Um, and I think it's just the way the elemental spells are best implemented is there is I can't show it right now, but there is talent that makes makes it so when you use the same elemental spells one after another, the damage increases. So basically, if I use a fire spell level 1 on the opponent, and then right after that I use a fire spell level 2 or any other fire spell, it doesn't have to be a consecutive level, any other fire spell, the next fire spell's damage gets increased more. So that's kind of it's a good thing about it. But yeah, I think we should for now leave it at C tier because it's not
One more
completely,
thing.
but yeah, it's unfortunately not as good as or powerful as it should be. Um, Moving on, we have the bard. Oh, okay, that's an interesting class, and I would ask someone else to start talking about this one because I've actually never played bard, so I'm probably the least qualified person on here to speak about it. Troll Project, can you start with the bard?
Yeah, he's basically mage but better. Uh, he has crowd control. He has decent enough damage, at least for the early game. Late game, he kind of falls off because everyone becomes resistant to sonic damage. Jester is straight up better than Troubadour. He has 133% chance to do double damage versus 25% more damage all the time, so just more damage. Fool is kind of a jack of all trades class. You'll have to use abilities like spells, melee attacks, bard abilities, everything because you have all these extra stat points. And Battle Poet is fine, I guess, but it's probably the worst here.
Mm. Um, yeah, I would just quickly add that so the full class drastically changes the way you play the game more than any other class and subclass because you never learn new talents, which is a huge part of the game and in making the heroes. But because of that, you gain double the normal stat points. Usually, you gain 2 when you level up, and this way you get 4. Uh, so your stat points are going to be pretty crazy in exchange for not having any talents. And I know that the Bard used to be OP in the very early stages of the game and the balancing, but over time, it got nerfed, it got more settled in. I know it does. I've heard it does work for the normal difficulties of the game. However, Troll Project, I think it was you that said that you have played Bard on Hellscape, which is the hardest difficulty, and it is either impossible or almost impossible to defeat the Starbound Gladiator, which is the final boss of the game, as a Bard on Hellscape, or the harder difficulties.
As a full, it's easier. As a jester, it's way harder and very long, which gives him the more time to just, you know, kill you.
For those, so I probably should have started with this. For those who don't know, the bard and the jester is your main way of fighting is you use a guitar of some kind, and you attach sonic. So sonic attacks, the sonic abilities, sonic spells, guitar attacks. Those are all sonic, and it's again crowd control. But so where would you put it on the tier list? Like
Low B tier, I guess.
tier. Okay. That seems fair. It does seem like it's from most of the people I've heard. It does seem more consistent and better than Wizard overall. Let's switch it up a bit. Sovereign.
Out of all the classes in the game, Bard is definitely one of them. Uh, it Bard is kind of weird because on paper I would rate it as S because it it can do melee damage good, it can do spells good, better than Wizard because the sonic skills are just better, and it is really good at spamming stunning skills, which is the best strategy in the game if you just want to win. So this should be the best class in the game, except for the fact that you already mentioned, you cannot beat the final boss. He just has too much sonic resistance and it completely demolishes bards. And I feel like if you cannot beat the final boss, then you know you just cannot win the game.
Yeah.
So that sucks. And I believe this brings it down from S tier all the way to like B tier to like middle.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair argument. Starbound Gladiator, for anybody who doesn't know, being the final boss, and the worst part is not that he basically has resistance to most of he has strong resistance to most types of attacks and spells, but the biggest part is that he has so much HP and he heals so fast that it is literally almost impossible to kill him with some classes because he heals more HP than you deal to him. And oftentimes you have to use poison attacks to stop his healing temporarily so you can kill him, because otherwise you do if you do like 1,000 damage, 2,000 damage, he heals like 1,000 or 1,500, or sometimes more, and it is just very very difficult to fight. Moving over to Nick.
Yeah, I would say that all around it's a great class and it does indeed do things better than the wizard class. It gives you variety. You can fight from range. You do also do decent blunt damage up close. I find the fight against Eternal Pita, for example, that's like the fifth or sixth grand champion, to be quite doable if you level up a lot and then just bash him. And um, indeed, what Sovereign said about the stun attacks, it's great for keeping people where you want to keep them at a distance.
Crowd control, yeah.
Crowd control, yes. And what I was thinking about is that what makes Bar really strong, especially against strong bosses, even though it has a decreased chance, is the Virtuoso ability. And I do have a question. If you have like Virtuoso on every piece of armor, does that stack? Or can you only have 1 point? or the maximum amount of points per talent.
Could
You
you?
can't go over the talent limit in this game.
Okay, so then I would think the Bard class has to go into S tier because even if you get to Starbound Gladiator and you get a lot of Virtuoso, you can just hard force the RNG and get him. And it's takes time, but it can be done, even though he has multiple phases. But you need luck that the Virtuoso
Um,
activates.
could you remind me and some of the audience, in case they don't know exactly what Virtuoso does? Because I don't actually exactly remember what it does right now.
Virtuoso
Hold
makes it
on.
so that whenever you deal sonic damage, you have a small chance to just instantly kill the enemy, just end the fight, you just win.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it
One
just
percent per skill or
okay.
per
Again,
talent point, and you can really stack that up if you get Virtuoso on all your items.
You can? Oh.
Yeah,
uh,
like Yeti just said, the talents can stack up, and I have Virtuoso talents on
Well,
my
actually,
armor pieces. Let me check.
the thing is, I don't think they can. Talents can stack up, but I don't think they could stack. I didn't think they could stack up after past like five, for example. I think, or
say something.
Per armor piece.
Yeah,
I
in Immortals there is a limit to the what is
stacking.
it called? Yes.
I
Basically, I don't know what it is for Virtuoso. It is like either five or just one, I'm not sure. But if you reach that maximum level of the Virtuoso skill, then you cannot go over it. You cannot like learn 5 times the Virtuoso spell to level it up to the max, and then get like an armor piece that gives you Virtuoso. It does not help.
Yeah, that's what
It's
I was
just
thinking
5.
as well. Yeah, so I don't think you can actually stack it because so you have 7 armor pieces, right? Maximum or 6, depending on if you have a shield or not. Let's say 6 armor pieces because you can't have a shield in a guitar. So 6 armor pieces times 2 enchantments, 12. So
7 armor actually, 7.
oh, 7 is it? Okay, yeah. Then my bad. 7. I mean, it's still 7 times 2, 14. If you equipped all those virtuoso, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think you can stack him like that because that would be incredibly overpowered for
You
some
can't.
other talents. Are you saying you can or can't?
You cannot.
You okay? You cannot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
This misconception comes from the third game because in the third game you can stack indefinitely
yeah,
as long as you have armor pieces. So you can have like 40 in a skill if you get enough armor.
yep.
Here it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, the third game being the precursor and the core of basically the this game, the Sword and Sandals Immortals, is the closest to Sword and Sandals 3. It shares a lot of similarities, and unfortunately, 3 being the first one and made 15 years ago, is very unbalanced, and there is no limits, and for good reason they are put on Immortals because otherwise you can do stuff like this. So Nick,
And it,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I know I already talked a lot, but I just have to mention this. The virtuoso like never triggered for me on bosses. I guess I'm just not lucky, or there is just a really small chance. I had like 3 full playthroughs with virtuoso, and it never worked on bosses. And so I do not believe it's really viable because for you to beat the Starbound with it, it would need to trigger 3 times in a row. And I just do not think that's really feasible, personally.
Or you can only have it trigger. I mean, you only realistically need it to trigger the third time. But
Can,
um,
can I say
even
something?
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Vir- Virtuoso does instantly kill regular gladiators against any champion or dungeon boss. It doesn't insta kill them, it just does more damage. Not sure how much more damage, but not enough to matter against the Starbound Gladiator.
Yeah. I'm not. So I think with Virtuoso, I remember it says that it has a 1% sorry 1% chance of instantly killing champions. or gladiators, and even less chance. That's what it says. It says something in the sort of even less chance with champions, and I'm like, less than 1%. How much is that? Is that like 0.33? But whatever it is, it's just minuscule, and basically,
It's,
yeah,
it says a
And I think
reduced
I'm
effect on champions. So it does less than insta kill them. So it doesn't insta kill them, I
Oh,
guess.
okay. So that makes it even useless. Okay, so Nick, I would ask you again: would you still put it in S tier because that doesn't?
no, if it doesn't work,
No.
I wouldn't. But
Yeah.
I think it was a misunderstanding from me because I thought Yeti said it did work with the stacking up,
Yep.
but I didn't know it didn't instantly kill bosses. So that does make it useless. But I think it was good to talk about this talent because
Yeah.
it was quite mysterious yet quite appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one of
And
those. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
and the stat system in Swords and Sandals in general is kind of strange and nonsensical at times. I mean, you
Yeah.
can get bow mastery on a mace, for example. So, but yeah, that makes that argument invalid. So I would put it in high C, low B.
Yeah. I think we can just leave it at B for now, because it's still probably better than Wizard, in some ways, and that earns it a
Yeah,
B.
absolutely.
Yeah. So moving on, everybody uh talked about the bard, right? I think Sovereign talked as well, right?
Yes.
Uh,
What?
Sovereign, you talked about bard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you also put it in. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Knight. This one is interesting. Uh, does somebody else want to start with um, Knight? So it's not me every time. Nick or Sovereign, do you guys want to start this time?
Well, I can try.
Yep. Sovereign, go
In
ahead.
my in my experience, knight is very similar to warrior, except a little bit more tanky and little less damage. That's the feeling I get, and for that reason, I personally would put it in like A tier, maybe like high A tier, because it's just warrior except not as good. It has the knightly resolve ability. No, wait, no, that's the wrong one. The salute of honor ability, which you can use to instantly kill an enemy, which is really good and helps you to level up really quickly, and is the best thing about the class. Problem is that again, this will not work on late game bosses like the Starbound or the Angel guy that whose name I cannot pronounce,
Arkham.
or or dungeon bosses.
Yeah.
So this is a really great ability, but isn't and it is not an instant win button, as some people said. So yeah, I believe this is like a good class. If you are bored of warrior, you can try knight, and yeah, that's what I think about it. I will just mention that the paladin and dark paladin special abilities are really fun for me. Not super great, but like fun because I really like how you have to grow them. It feels like I earned that bonus. But yeah,
Yeah, they're
that's it.
they're basically the same thing. But one you have to be good, one you have to be bad. Um, Nick, do you wanna add on to the knight?
Yes, and I was also looking in my game and getting back to this screen because I was looking at the talents for a second. That's why I didn't answer. But I really like the knight class, especially with yeah the I myself play with the Templar class subclass because the shield is just really good for defense. It blocks the enemy so many times, and the Nightly Resolve is also amazing for normal to little harder difficulties. It's not enough for Hellscape because enemies will just hit you. They will hit you. But like on Nightmare, for example, it worked out great for me. And you're just really strong and consistent, and like we've already discussed, consistency is very important, and you just have a lot of tools to use. And I'm not exactly sure about Paladin and Dark Paladin. If you max them out, what is the damage bonus you actually get? Like 50% maybe?
That's
No
about
one
25%.
actually knows. Oh,
I ran some tests and I think it's 25% in general and double that against the opposite alignment.
okay, great, thanks.
mm, yeah,
That's good to know, and that could actually make it very powerful, especially against Starbound if you go with the Paladin ability, because you would have 50% more melee damage against him. We have already discussed that he does. He is resistant to sonic and spell attacks, so physical is your go-to damage output. So I myself would put it in A tier because it's not the best, but it's decent. It's great.
yeah. Um, I would say I agree with this kind of. I'm kind of neutral about this class, but I think A tier is a fair assessment for it. As I think Sovereign mentioned earlier, it is kind of like it very similarly resembles Warrior. It's the closest class to Warrior, but except it's tankier, and but it does a little bit less damage, so it's a bit less aggressive than Warrior is. But it does have, its upside. Even its starting bonuses you can see are two bonus defense and two bonus vitality versus the warriors two bonus strength and two bonus attack. Um, its abilities are, so how do you regain an extra 60% health and essence when resting, which is very good. It is very helpful. Um, Helps you heal, able to tank more hits, and able to regain your stamina faster to use your attacks. Heart of Valor. Um, all hits are critical when your health is less than 35%. This is also good if you started the round very badly and you're at small health. It's not super um, viable in late game because in the late game, by late game I mean late round, your enemy would not have armor anyway, as you would most likely have destroyed it. But still, because critical hits is basically bypassing the enemy armor and just hitting them straight for the HP. And if you get their HP down, their armor doesn't matter. But it's still a good thing to have. And 35% is not bad at all, I guess. It's not super good, but it's not bad. And nightly resolve instantly return your spirit to the calm level and boost your defense. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this. It's not. I think it's a waste of turn to use uh, this ability, but that's up to um, that's everybody has their own opinions. Salute of honor, strike the enemy. Now this is pretty good. Yeah, as someone mentioned earlier, and especially in the early game, this can just one shot your opponent. It's pretty good. The subclasses, the best ones are um, probably as Nick said, sword and shield is a very good one, and shield is actually extremely strong in this game. I've almost never used the shield, but I should have. It is very good. It's very good for tanking attacks and making your opponents harder to hit you. And especially this, that it gives you 25% melee damage while using the shield and sword is very good. It does kind of limit you. It kind of makes you use only a sword, but that's swords are pretty much the best out of all the weapons anyway. So it kind of adds up. Paladin and Dark Paladin are the same thing, except one is good alignment, the other one is bad alignment. Sorry, holy and unholy. And as Troll Project said, it's the percent is 25 to 50, so that's not bad as well. Um, Cavalier is the other end of the spectrum. This is actually so Cavalier and Templar are depending on the way you like to play. If you like to play with shields, with a sword and shield or mace and shield, sword and shield, then Templar is the one you go with. If you like to play two-handed weapons, two-handed weapons is basically means you can't use a shield because you use two hands. This is the one that you would be using. So I'd say out of all the classes, these subclasses are the least diverse because they kind of just like the Paladin and Dark Paladin are kind of opposites but the same at the same time. And then Cavalier and Templar are also they do the same thing but just with different weapons. So yeah, I think it's overall it's a decent class. I think it's I'd still say yeah, it's a worse warrior. I'd put it in A tier. It's still pretty good. Pretty.
Yeah, and if I may add
Of
one
course.
thing onto that, the nightly resolve is great in easier difficulties, but also early game
Mm.
because then people do not have a lot of attack, and then it will really help you get through that first part. The way I was thinking about knight versus warrior is that knight you're tanky throughout the entire game, and warrior you're even more tankier if you play man at arms with that 40% extra bonus, so you have 80% resistance against physical damage late game, so you kind of have to suffer to get to the top, while knight is a bit more consistent, but it will be more difficult at the end. But I also like knightly resolve because sometimes I have to kind of pass a turn because I don't have enough essence or health to do a certain action, or I'm in a certain position where I can't really do much. So I can easily pop that one, get an extra 10 defense, and it might make the do or die difference. And also, if you're almost at the point of defeating a boss, but it's about to get your spirit broken, you can just restore your spirit and save yourself from a tragic debuff. So
Mm.
that's what I also wanted to add. And the salute of honor is great, by the way, but that was already mentioned.
Yeah, that's a good point about nightly resolve, and you also reminded me to mention that yeah, in this game, the stuff like nightly resolve, as you mentioned, works in the easier difficulties, in the normal ones. But in this game, in Swords and Sandals Immortals, on the later difficulties, in single player at least, defense like buffing defense and working on your defensive abilities is almost not worth it at all because every enemy's attack and basically their stats on Hellscape, which is the highest difficulty of the game, they are so outrageous that it almost doesn't matter, or I would say it fully doesn't matter if you're fighting on Hellscape in the later game and you use like nightly resolve, boosting your defense by 10. I don't think it would help at all. So yeah, for the normal and easier difficulties, it definitely might come in handy.
Yeah, I think we all agree that knight is more tanky, but tankiness is not as good as damage. So that's why it's similar to warrior, but just a little bit worse. So I think we can
Yeah.
end the discussion.
That's fair. Yeah. Moving on. Well, actually, hold on. To add to that, well, not the knight, but the warrior. Then, I mean, yeah, I guess warrior is. We'll come back to warrior later. Whether to put him in S tier or leave him in high A tier. We'll just leave him here for now. So next one, rogue.
Can I just say something about rogue?
Yes, go ahead.
I am not going to talk about the rogue because I do not understand how you are supposed to play the rogue, and therefore I don't think I should talk about it because I just don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I will
That's all
leave the
right.
rating to you guys.
That's all right. You are free to talk or not talk about anything you want, and that's completely fine. As I said earlier, not everybody has played with every class and every subclass, so that's completely fine. Um, I think Troll, do you want to start because I know you have played with Archer. I have played with Archer, and you have played with Rogue, and but you have had more success and you're way better with Rogue than I am. Um, so I think you would be a better fit to start off with the rogue class?
Okay. Rogue is basically the class you want to go if you want to play an archer because of you can see 30% more damage while using ranged weapons, 20% more bonuses from agility. Ronin is also interesting. He's basic. He does around the same damage as fighter warrior, but he has better starting abilities and attacking first more often is kind of beneficial. Ninja is the worst subclass, not just in the raw class, but probably the entire game because critical hits don't do that much extra damage. And Thug is just an inferior mana terms because he takes 20% as physical damage instead of 40%.
Mm, yeah, that's a fair. Where would you put that on the tier list?
And Archer doesn't, it's kind of harder to stun someone and you have to make distance every fight
Mm,
if you go for an Archer.
yeah.
So, B tier probably.
B tier. That is pretty generous. Let's put it in B tier for right now.
Worse
Um,
than
Worst in Bard. Okay, yeah. Do you want to add anything else about it, or you're good for now?
not really.
Okay. I can continue off. Yeah. Basically, the rogue is the best and most efficient way to play rogue is as an archer. Basically, it does resemble wizard in the way that you have to run away from. You have to not let the opponents reach you at face hug distance, so they can. Yeah, basically you deal damage from far away with bows as an archer, and um, you run away. But actually, the reason why archer is better at this than wizard is because archer actually, as archer, you will be leveling up your agility, which increases your movement. So at late game, you will be extremely fast. And I've played recently as an archer, and at the end game with one jump, I can jump from one end of the map almost to the other end of the map. So that is, it's not super hard to run away from opponents, even though at the late game a lot of them are almost as fast as you. But as Nick said, I haven't actually played as any of the other subclasses, so I'm not also entirely sure exactly how it would go to play as this class as a melee. But looking at Ronin, you gain 33% damage bonus while wielding swords. Yeah, this just seems like an inferior warrior and knight as a melee fighter class because you do have some bonuses, but you are more susceptible. You're not as resistant to damage, and you're not as tanky. Basically, this class is made kind of like it's like the name Rogue. It's you're like a ninja-esque warrior that strikes and runs away, kind of thing. Ninja, your critical hit chance is increased by 25%. That's not bad, but it's very situational, and 25% is not a lot. Especially in late game when they don't have armor, this ability is completely useless. But let me just quickly gloss over the other parts of this. So the normal abilities it has is athletic. All bonus from agility are increased by 20%. This is one of the main reasons this class is so fast, as to run away and jump away. You just almost always be able to do that. And even in the early game, the difference being fast becomes it's pretty big. Cat-like reflexes gain a 5 advantage when rolling the starting die. Now this is actually a very good ability that I took advantage of. Basically, when I played my archer campaign, I had +5 advantage when starting the rolling die. The rolling die, for anybody who doesn't know, is for the audience, is when you are starting the round, a die is rolled, and if you don't score high enough on the die, you don't start first, and your opponent starts first. And starting first as an archer, I mean, it's important as every class, but as archer specifically is extremely important because you want to move away from your opponent as much as possible, as fast as possible. And +5 advantage when rolling the starting die, this comes naturally to this class, to any of the 4 ones as rogue. And then +5 from the skill tree means +10 to the rolling die. So you have like a 85-90% at least chance that you will be starting first in almost all the turns. Now, this doesn't matter in the final battle because you start first anyway, no matter what. But, yeah, so that is kind of a wasted ability on the Starborn Gladiator. But Shadows and Dust, it's an extremely useful skill. I think, is this for all of them? Yeah. You basically do an attack to your enemy and leap back, and when you were at the late game, when you were very fast, you basically hit them for like 500 or 1000 damage, and then you basically give them an attack and you leap back, so you have 2 things doing at the same time, and that's very good. You make distance. Blood Pact, I didn't really ever use this. This is kind of a it's not a super useful one. I mean, you basically exchange 10% of your health to regain 50% of your essence, but you can kind of do that just by sleeping. And sleeping does make you vulnerable to attacks if your enemy does manage to attack you while you're sleeping, because that gives them a 100% chance of hitting you. So, but it's still better. I haven't found a use for Blood Pact really. So, in terms of the tier list, yeah, it's kind of rough. Honestly, I'm wondering either high C tier or low B tier. I'm just gonna leave it at B tier for now. I think, yeah, the best way to implement this is by playing as archer. You can definitely find some other like fun ways to play with this, but they're not super meta and they're not very strong compared to some of the other classes that we've talked about and that we've yet to talk about. As in terms of all the, and I'm gonna quickly finish this up because I've been talking for a while and I apologize. The best classes, yeah, archer, Ronin for archer class, subclass for if you want to be an archer with a bow, and then for weapons, it's probably Ronin. Ninja, that's probably the worst class, as someone said, probably from the game. Yeah, it's really useless. And thug, 20%. Yeah, that's just the worst knight or warrior, basically. So yeah, I would leave it at low B tier or high C tier. So Pro Project talked. I mean, I talked. Oh, Nick.
I didn't yet.
Yeah, Sovereign, go ahead.
Well, I
about the
would
rogue?
agree.
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry, what?
No, sorry. Go
No,
on.
Go ahead, Sovereign. Go ahead.
We are still talking about the rogue, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So as I said, I do not have anything to say about the rogue. I do not understand their abilities, their playstyle, so I will not say anything. That's what I wanted to remind you. That's it.
That my bad. I thought Nick said it. That was you. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So Sovereign. Yeah. Okay. Nick, go ahead.
Okay, I'm not muted.
Yeah, we can hear
Let me
you.
go ahead to this screen. I would agree with a lower B tier because it's not as good as the Bard class, but it is better than the Wizard class. But I don't know, because I never reached the end with the Archer class with Rogue, because I played a lot of Rogue before the subclasses came out, and it was pretty decent. And now with Hellscape, I've tried to do an Archer build with Spellblade, but I kind of got blocked because I didn't have enough attack. It was the hit chances were just too low. So if I think about the Archer class having more effect on agility, it could be great and do very well. It's gonna be a class that will help you kill enemies over time. Damage is not really your concern. Staying alive is. And having enough agility to jump away, but also enough chance to do damage in the first place. And I think the most important thing about the rogue class would be to use the extra skill sets, the extra talents and skills you learn to do a lot of damage when it's necessary. For example, against priests who heal with the let me see, with the cure wounds ability, because they can kind of spam that, and that would make them undefeatable. Or you need to get lucky with a critical fatality that could help, but not against Starbound, for example. But yeah, I would say this class has potential, but it's not the best. And like the rest already said,
Yeah.
Archer is really the best class to go with here, and the rest isn't really worth it. Really, you have other classes for those
Yeah, you have just
abilities you get,
yeah, they're
and
worse
that's kind of my
classes.
take on Rogue.
Yep, sorry for interrupting.
No problem, no problem. But I
Yeah,
haven't played this class much, but from what I know, it's all right.
yeah. I think we are pretty unanimous in that. Basically, it is better. It's definitely better than Wizard. Might be honestly on the same par as Bard, or I mean, maybe a little bit worse, but it's more situational, and pretty much the main way to play it is Archer, because if you can play with Ronin, but again the other three um, parts, subclasses of Rogue are just inferior classes of other better subclasses and classes of the game, so there's
Yes,
no
and
really reason to,
indeed.
yeah, go ahead.
And my concern is just that in the end game, you do enough damage to counteract the healing of the later bosses. Like maybe Yeti can comment on that.
You do have the ultimate warrior talent where the more physical attacks you land, the more damage you do, and this stacks infinitely. So as long as you can hit them consistently, you can do enough damage without them blocking an attack, I mean.
Yeah, I would like to add to that for context. Troll Project is among here the best archer, so he has completed the game on the hardest difficulty, on Hell Scale difficulty, with tough bosses. He has completed it as an archer, which is a incredible feat. I myself actually forgot to mention that despite having played archer, I actually haven't officially completed the game as archer. I have a save with archer on insane difficulty, and I have not defeated Starbound Gladiator as of yet. I've come very close, and I'm sure if I do enough attempts, I will kill, like I will beat him. I haven't as of yet. It is doable, but yeah, I haven't actually officially finished it. But that's more so probably my fault as not being as good of archer to do that. So yeah, I would say yeah, that's pretty much all we can say about the rogue for right now. And the final class that we are moving on to is the priest, which is also another. It's an interesting class, one that I actually haven't played. So I'm not the best person to talk about this. Does somebody else want to start with this one?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't talk about it too much, but Priest is my favorite class, and I adore it. Um, how I would describe it best is that it is the jack of all trades. You can build it to do pretty much anything. You can do a spellcaster, you can do a tanky priest, or you can do melee attacker, or you can mix any of those. Uh, of course, the bad thing about this is that no matter what you do, you will never be the best. So even if you do melee build, you will not be as good as warrior, and if you do tanky build, you will not be as good as warrior. To be honest, I love the class, but it belongs somewhere around low A tier, high B tier, in my opinion. And I'm going to stop talking here because I could legit talk about this class and all its synergies for like an hour. So I will just cut myself off.
That's fine. We can go back to you after everybody else has said something else. I mean, it is nice
Well,
to have.
I
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I have not played this class like Sovereign didn't play Rogue, so I don't really have much to say on this class. So I think the ones that really are going to shine discussing this one are Yeti and Sovereign. But as we speak about these classes, I've noticed Kalinick kind of gives a general consensus of all the subclasses as a whole, and the rest of us have been giving our specific opinion about what's best and worst about the class overall, not covering all the subclasses. So I think Sovereign, you could
Yes,
cover all the subclasses like Kalinick did with the rest of the
Yep.
classes
Yep.
and
Yep.
give
well,
Yep.
your part on those.
I definitely can. I played all of them at some point, most of them multiple times, so I could do that.
Okay. Quick
Uh,
question. Yep. Go ahead.
Awesome.
Sorry. Go ahead.
all right. So the first class is cleric, where you basically all healing you do is doubled. Uh, there is not there are not many healing abilities in the game. Basically, you get the cleric healing ability, the cure wounds, and some racial abilities, and that's about it. But on easier difficulties, like from easiest to high, I would say, this is actually really good because it makes you nearly unkillable if you use it properly. And it is really annoying in multiplayer. It kind of falls off in the Hellscape difficulty, but that is the whole story of Priest in general. All of the classes fall off in Hellscape, except one that I will get to later. Then there is Chaplain, I believe that's how you pronounce it,
Yep.
where you do extra damage with clubs. This is like, I like this, but it is not very good. You are basically forced to play warrior, like warrior type priest. You just have to use melee damage, and as we said before, warrior is just the best at that, and even knight can be better. And if you are like insane and cracked and you know the game really well, even wizard spellblade is probably better than chaplain. I just love it because it allows me to kill Antares, the big bone boy,
Yeah.
in like
Antares.
3 attacks if I'm lucky,
Yeah. It
because
is.
they are weak. Because though this is basically, you use clubs, and those are effective against undead, and also as priest you get ability, you get a bonus where you do more damage to undead. So you just absolutely demolish undead if you are a chaplain, and I love that. But because a lot of the enemies are not undead, it's not very useful.
Yep.
Uh,
Antares is extremely useful to be able to beat though, and that is like that feels like it's made again for him or against him. So yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
yeah, it is pretty good. If it worked against Starbound as well, it would be like one of the best classes, but sadly it is not.
Yeah.
Then we have Inquisitor, which is basically, if you are losing, it doesn't help you much, but if you are winning, you win really hard. That's how I would describe it. Your Holy Heal and Holy Smite are improved, and they do double the effect. This is really good. This can be a huge damage boost or healing boost. The problem is you can only use this once. I would kind of compare it to Knight's Salute of Honor, where it can help you to use one decisive strike and win the fight. Except not as good because it does not ignore armor. Uh, so yeah, and if you are fighting an evil, no, if you are fighting a good enemy, then this heals you instead, and it's just not as good as cleric's healing. Uh, so yeah, then we get to the Zen monk, and Zen monk is probably the best class if you know how to use it. This can be absolutely insane. Some people who are not me, for example, the Troll Project, are able to use Zen Monk to do like insane damage and absolutely demolish everything. So yeah, this is probably the best class for priest. It's kind of like Spellblade except better because you are not a shitty ass wizard. And so yeah, if Troll Project, if you would like to talk more about Zen Monk and priest in general, then go ahead.
Yes, so Spiritual Hammer and the Wizard's Arcane Blast ability might as well be the same ability. They scale with strength and agility, and it feels like they don't scale with intellect at all. And Zenmok is my personal favorite class. Combined with the Floralist Grace, you can basically beat the game naked. And I don't really have much to say about the other subclasses. Chaplain feels like an excuse to use clubs. Inquisitor is fun, kind of funny, doing 3,000 damage with one smite, and Cleric is just half your health with one. Regenerating half your health with one ability is enough. You don't need more than that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. To quickly add to the Zen Monk, 150% damage is extra 150% damage is wild. When you do like a simple math, if you were to do 1,000 damage with this one, it would become 2,500 damage, which is crazy. Of course, you'd have to be wearing no armor, but as Troll Project said, this best fits the Floralisk race, where you don't wear any armor and they're extremely tanky, and it works very well. Troll Project, where would you put Priest? Do you agree it's like 8 year, mid 8 year, low 8 year? It looks like it's
Yeah,
a
eight,
pretty
yeah.
yeah. It looks like it is a pretty good all
Yeah, I personally would put priest under knight.
under Knight. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
Um,
I know I'm the priest guy. I love priests, but like it is not the best. It is not the second best class in the game.
well, no, I mean you have a fair assessment of it. You're not letting your bias get in the way of assessing the ability, which is perfect and much appreciated. Um, uh, so yeah, I mean it is definitely so. Honestly, if I were, I might, if I were to do another walkthrough this game, I might try priest because the Zen monk priest seems like something that would be fun. And of course, this is all our own personal thoughts about it, and this is why I've gathered different people with different mindsets. Somebody is better adept to talking about a certain class or playstyle, and then someone else is for something else, and we all have a different way of seeing and playing the game. And I think it would help people in case they watch the video and they want to kind of get a hold of a feel of what they can expect from the different classes and how to kind of best play them and assemble them. Now to go to the overall tier list. Does anybody do we agree with how it is right now? I would still argue that. Yep, go ahead.
I would say after discussing all the classes and knowing just about that 80% physical damage resistance, I would put Warrior in S tier.
I was actually gonna say the same thing. I think Warrior is S tier. I think we should put it in like S tier, especially in terms of like the a beginner for beginner players, and for the easier difficulties, even the normal difficulties, it exceeds better than the other classes probably. Um, you could make an argument that it's still A tier, but I mean, I think S tier is also a deserved spot for it. I am set on Wizard. I know someone wanted him to be D tier. I think C tier is good for Wizard. I think honestly, pretty much. Oh, I agree with all the rest. So for me, they're all good. Anyone else?
I'm good with
This
this.
looks good to me. Yeah, this looks
Yeah.
good to me. If I had to make my own tier list, it would look pretty much like this.
Yep.
I mean, I would put Wizard in D tier, but that's about it. And I understand if you guys don't want to do that.
Yeah, let's give the wizard people some love. It's not all darkness and misery. There's some slight lights in the tunnel.
Yeah, like the spell blade class is just so interesting, and you can do so much with it because of that. Yeah, because of that damage bonus. It's kind of like Zen monk, but you get to keep your armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. You can keep it there. I do not mind.
Yep.
But yeah, without spell blade, that thing goes straight to D.
Yeah, I agree with that. Throne Project. Do you want to add something about the tier list?
Uh, Not so much the tier list as that Zermok is basically Pit Brawler but superior. Pit Brawler can do up to about 200% more damage, but he has to be almost dead, whereas Zermok only has to be naked to
Hmm.
do 150% more.
That's actually a good point. And
Yeah,
with Zen Monk playing as priest, you would be leveling up your vitality a lot. So you will have a lot of HP because you will be dependent on it, because you won't have any armor. So you will have like 3, 4, 5,000 HP or something like that, right?
Don't need to not wear any armor, it's just a suggestion.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I guess yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, if you do want to get the 150% extra damage, it does say that it only happens while wearing no armor. At least that's how I understand it. But yeah,
If
you don't have to play with no armor if you don't want to. That's fair.
if your armor breaks in battle, you still get the bonus then.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah.
yeah. The way I would put it is to get the bonus from Pit Brawler, you need to lose your health,
Hmm.
which is bad because you will die if you lose your health. To get the bonus from Zen Monk, you just need to lose your armor, which is not as bad because you still have health.
Honestly, that makes. I mean, yeah, it's still. I think it's still. And you could argue that you could put it above Knight, but I mean, Sovereign, still being
I mean,
an
if
expert priest is. Yeah.
the thing is, to be this good with Zen Monk, you need to be so good you can basically win the game with anything.
Yeah, that's true. That's another thing is sometimes we get carried off when we start talking about because we're all experienced players who have completed the game at least several times with
Yeah.
and at least with a few different classes of the classes, so we have a pretty good understanding of it, and sometimes we don't realize when we talk about stuff that regarding new players, some of this stuff is not as easy and straightforward as it might seem. So I apologize about that. We do get carried off, and we are passionate about this, which is why we have gathered to talk and hopefully help new players with this, like choosing classes whenever they ask. Hopefully, because we see people in Discord, almost all the questions from new people regarding Immortals are which classes they should play and how to play them, and hopefully this will help them in making that choice and understanding some of these. However, I do. It is important to say that a lot of these, despite everybody playing at different difficulties, and the game has like 7 or 8 different difficulties, a lot of these are still mostly act the same way in the beginning and middle difficulties. As someone mentioned earlier, the end, like the insane and hellscape difficulties, are kind of exclusive in the way that most of the classes don't work as well in the later difficulties because it's so hard. But I still would say it's pretty accurate. Our description and discussions have been pretty accurate regarding how they would be played in the game in single player, in the beginning and middle difficulties. So yeah, I think if I'm content with this tier list, and I think everybody else is, unless somebody else wants to add something, we are pretty much done with this tier list. And it's been a pleasure talking with you guys about it.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
I said everything.
I've said everything.
Nice.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Perfect.